Herculaneum, Missouri looks like a regular Midwestern town. Located along the Mississippi River, just 25 miles south of St. Louis, it's a place families have called home for generations. But the community is threatened by an ominous truth that lurks all around them.
People should have the option to take their children out of here. It's not an easy option for a parent to buy a house, think they have a good community for their children. This has been my only place that I've ever been this long. I'm sorry. It's our home. But we should have the option to get them out. It's like a silent killer to our children.
Eve Bieber and her husband Greg want to leave their home in Herculaneum and not look back. When they moved in, the couple thought this would be the ideal place to raise their family. However, the town was built for large-scale lead smelting, and the lead that helped build the town economically has been emotionally destructive to the Bieber family and much of the community.
We can't take back what's been done to our children. We can't bring it back. They've already been affected.
I felt almost like a prisoner in my own home because I couldn't go out and enjoy my yard and because it was contaminated with lead.
I mean, no matter what, our children are not going to be safe in the future. So it's a little scary.
Not all Herculaneum residents fear living so close to the lead. John Porchy's family has lived in Herculaneum for over 100 years, and he has no desire to live anywhere else.
I'm hoping to live here until I pass away. Why would I want to uproot my family and move to a different place? This is home. This has always been my home. When people moved in here, they knew what they were moving into. It's a mining town. I mean, if you don't like it, don't move in here.
People live in lead communities all over the globe. The United States, Peru, China, and Australia are some of the largest producers. Herculaneum borders the third largest lead region, known as the Missouri Lead Belt. The mineral is first mined throughout the lead belt and then brought to neighboring Herculaneum to be smelted. Smelting is a process used to separate lead from rock. This has gone on since the 1700s. Smelting remains a major industry in Herculaneum. The product is used in bullets and car batteries, cell phones and computer screens, electric scooters, and oil pipes. While the lead belt is celebrated as one of the world's largest lead producers, some predict that it could be the downfall of the community.
There's this old historical theory that the Roman Empire declined and fell because of lead contamination, and they used lead to line the aqueducts. This is a documented fact, and they also used it to improve the preservation of wine that they drank a lot of. And somebody came up with an idea that was considered kooky, that the Roman Empire, that the madness of Caligula and the collapse of the Roman Empire was all due to too much lead.
Herculaneum is actually named after the lead-making center of ancient Rome. Known as Herky to the locals, the town is home to Doe Run, a multi-million-dollar lead processing company. Many Herculaneum residents were attracted by the area's affordable housing.
What brought me to Herculaneum? Small town, nice area. We got a house, a decent house for the money, with a big, nice yard. Little did we know we weren't going to get to play in that yard.
I bought a house in Herculaneum because one, the price is cheap, and in surrounding areas, houses big run about $120,000. This was $87,000.
We were kind of thinking, well, this is a starter house. We get it all done up all the way we want to, and we can maybe, sell it, buy something better, and move on, hopefully move up a little bit. Well, that didn't happen. It was 20 years later, we're still here.
Many people who move to Herculaneum don't know the health risk associated with living near lead. The entire town is dominated by the view of the Doe Run smokestack, a brooding reminder of the environmental contamination.
There is lead in Herculaneum. Lead, don't take a rocket scientist, you can read the things. Lead is a toxin. It's not good for people. We are living in a close proximity of it.
If you're going to take a direct line, we live about a half mile away from the smokestack.
You can hear it running.
We can hear it running, and it runs pretty much 24/7.
It's not just the smelter that runs all day and all night. The lead is constantly transported by truck from the mines to the smelter. The trucks even pass right through residential neighborhoods, and throughout the journey, harmful toxins can be released into the environment.
There were probably 60 to 70 houses that they passed every day. And I would sit at my house and watch out the window as the track team is running down the road and these trucks are just whizzing by right behind them, you know, and they're just in, if this lead is on the trucks, you know it's blowing, and so these kids are getting it in their face and everything else.
You've got a situation where there's 300,000 parts per million of lead content on the street, and you have children standing there waiting for school buses. We got to stop this thing here right now. You know, get these kids out of the harm.
Whether people live near the mines or the smelters, none of them are immune from lead. It seeps into everything it comes in contact with, including soil, water, air, and even people.
Lead is a heavy metal and it's toxic in even very small quantities. The body copes with it by depositing the lead in hard tissue, in your bones and your teeth, and when it becomes too much to handle, then it gets in the blood. Everybody's susceptible to lead poisoning. I don't think anybody's immune.
Despite expert opinions that lead exposure leads to a variety of health problems, some families believe that they aren't affected.
My family hasn't been ever since I've been here, like I said, since 1969. My point of view, I don't see that there's a problem in Herculaneum.
But for each person who believes there is no problem, there are many who don't let a day pass by without seeking solutions. And in the midst of this, contradictory opinions abound about how best to protect themselves.
You know, as long as you keep your house clean, live clean, wash your clothes, you know, and don't let your kids eat a whole bunch of dirt out here in front. It's a fine place to live. I have no problem with it. None of my kids have ever had a problem. I don't have a problem. It never affected any of my family.
You know, I could just attach a broom to my hip all the time, and because that's what I do. I mop the floors constantly to keep the stuff out of the house. You know, and we have 2 dogs, so there they go, rolling around in the dirt and then coming in the house. And so yeah, it's a constant battle.
The lead became an issue for newlyweds Tiffany and Kevin Kondracki once they thought about starting a family.
It's definitely one of my biggest fears, and from some of the research that I had done, I found out that even if we do have kids, you're supposed to let the pediatrician know that we live this close to a lead plant. So it's definitely a little scary.
And another concern we have is she has rheumatoid arthritis, which is
An immune deficiency.
Immune deficiency. So if we do live here long enough, is that going to affect her in the long run?
The Biebers say their 2 sons are a testament to the harmful effect lead can have on children. While raising their oldest son, Dustin, their knowledge about lead in the neighborhood was limited. At first, they didn't worry about Dustin going outside to play, until they started to notice an unusual change in his behavior.
He was a pretty bright, chipper little kid, you know, normal, you know, enjoying life and stuff, and he changed, you know, over a couple of years. I mean, I bought him a little dirt bike when he was a kid, and actually used to ride the thing on a slag pile down there, and I didn't.
We weren't aware it was a slag pile.
I mean, it was a big pile of coal is what I thought it was at the time.
Nobody would come home.
Itching.
Well, it was worse than itching. He would come home after a day, and he would honestly run into the shower and was screaming that he was burning, and he was trying to wash this stuff off.
Greg Bieber assumed the changes in his son were just a normal part of adolescent behavior, so he became stricter with his son. But after coming across research about lead poisoning, he reflected on the real reason his son changed so much during that time.
I was kind of hard on him, I guess, you know, about, you know, straightening it up. And his school grades went south, you know, his concentration, man, and I tell you, you know, years later, it kind of hurts, you know. I read this thing, you know, about behavior, you know. Ooh, I'm sorry. But, you know, all these things that they say about this lead kind of fit in with Dustin, you know.
We had a cluster of ALS patients that lived close to the smelter, and then we've had several people who have developed MS. But there again, can you prove, where it came from, no.
It is hard to prove medically that these health problems are directly linked to lead, but there are definite trends in lead regions that show there is a correlation.
It takes several years of exposure. But if the mother's exposed, it could begin prenatally. It's not something that happens real fast, but if you've got several years of exposure, it's going to impact your development.
According to a 2003 report in the Annual Review of Medicine, exposing children to toxic lead, even at a lead level below 10, causes some of them to become impulsive, aggressive, antisocial, delinquent, and violent. The more the lead, the worse the behavior. A researcher at Southern Illinois University analyzed soil from 2 sites in Herculaneum, and he found the concentration of lead in his samples is substantially higher than what experts consider safe.
We selected 2 showing the highest contamination. We saw a range of between, I believe, 500 parts per million up to 1,200 parts per million, or milligrams of lead per kilogram of soil. Now, just to give you a general idea, the US EPA has kind of set their total lead concentration level at 400 parts per million, or 400 milligrams of lead per kilogram of soil. And this was based on just the assumption that anyone that comes in contact with that contaminated soil, if they ingest it either directly or through the air, that a certain percentage of that total will become bioavailable or will be absorbed into their body or into their bloodstream. So you can just see at the levels we were dealing with almost 3 times that of the minimum in the US EPA, kind of what they had screened for.
The health professionals and everyone will tell you that the people that are more susceptible are children under 6 and people with autoimmune problems or older people. So they're going to say that a healthy 17-year-old is not going to be as susceptible to it as a smaller child.
Well, it disrupts growth, so it's especially bad for children. Too much lead contamination has a physiological effect on the body of impeding normal cell function, and it'll delay growth and delay maturation. And there are some documented instances of kids having delayed mental development because of the lead.
By the time the Biebers had their second child, Dylan, they were much more aware of lead's presence in their lives. This time around, armed with information, they had the baby tested, and the test confirmed lead was present in Dylan's body.
And I asked that lady at the health department, I remember to this day, I looked at her and I said, "What does this mean?" And she looked at me and said, "He'll probably never live up to his potential." This is a 2-year-old baby.
People should have the option to take their children out of here. It's not an easy option for a parent to buy a house, think they have a good community for their children. This has been my only place that I've ever been this long. I'm sorry.
What's our home?
It's our home. But we should have the option to get them out. It's like a silent killer to our children. And we don't have that option. And it's not fair. And even if you have that option, it's hard on people. It's hard on families like us to take our kids and pack them up and leave a community that we thought was being honest with us.
Families living near any type of lead plant are encouraged to have their lead levels tested periodically. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention warns that a lead level in the blood greater than 10 micrograms per deciliter is considered elevated. However, experts warn to not be fooled by that estimate.
That doesn't mean a little bit of lead is good for you. It's always bad for you, and it's not a necessary nutrient.
In Herculaneum, the results of the children's blood tests vary from extremely high to average. The interpretation of those results also varies.
Had Dylan checked out, and he popped up, I think it was at 12. He was 2 years old at the time.
We've been tested for lead. Me and my girls both have. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'm about a 4, and my daughters are about a 3. I've lived here since, like I said, since 1969. My brother and I were raised here on this piece of property, and none of us have ever had a problem with it.
All of my daughters have been tested. My youngest one, she is 4, and she was tested at the age of 2, and she had a level of a 3, which they say anything below a 10 is not considered leaded. But there are many studies out there that show that even in small doses, it can cause problems.
In 2004, Doe Run offers a buyout to residents within a 3/8 of a mile radius of the smelter. The buyout worked like this. Doe Run pays a sum of money and gets the contaminated houses. The residents get the money and move to new houses, further from the smelter. Families with children under the age of 6 were prioritized, an indication that the company was well aware of the dangers its operation posed to its neighbors. 160 families packed their belongings and left their homes, but many more still wait, hoping Doe Run will also make them an offer. They live in close proximity to the smelter and do not believe the lead simply stops at the 3/8 mile mark. The Biebers missed the buyout by just a half a block.
I don't know what paints that great big, that what makes that curtain happen there is economics, I'm sure, is what made that. All of a sudden the lead stops, right down here at the end of the street and doesn't come over here. Well, it does come here,
I did approach them to buy me out. Yeah, I did. When my daughter's lead level went up. And no, I was not looking for money. I strictly wanted to be able to walk away from my house. Just pay off my mortgage. I even offered it to the general manager of the plant. He was looking for a house. I'm like, I've got a great house for you, because the managers used to live in those houses up there. So they were built, and I said, I have a great house for you. Well, do you think he lives here in Herculaneum? Mm-mm. So, yeah.
Because we live so close, we do hope someday that Doe Run would buy our house out. We don't know if that will happen because of the high school being right here, but we'll live in this house forever, but if they were to buy it out, that'd be one way of getting out of here.
Do they test?
I'll tell you what, though, I'll be very honest with you. If somebody come and said, Greg, I'll pay off what you owe in the house, you wouldn't see the smoke clear, brother.
But I'll be honest, I would cry going out because we were lied to. This is our home. This is where I had planned on raising our children in a small community. I know it's going to affect our son that way too, leaving. Yeah. And so I have some anger issues there. And I have every right to be angry. But if it came down to it, yes, we would have to make that move and deal with it, because for the kids' sake, the lead is not gone. It's not going anywhere.
Another thing that isn't going anywhere is Herculaneum High School. Although the school fell inside the original buyout zone, the map was redrawn so the school didn't have to be moved. Many people are confused why the school was allowed to stay in a hazard area.
Because you think that, a high school would be smart enough not to put their students here and put them at risk.
Herculaneum was one of the most polluted schools in the U.S.
You wonder why it's here. Because it does kind of make you feel like, the high school's here, that must be safe.
We had a small school for our kids where we could keep an eye on them. A little town where you could keep an eye on them.
It had a little hidden monster inside of it.
And then it had the silent monster inside of it that nobody admitted to us.
And it's definitely,
So yes, it makes people emotional that can't get their kids out. You want them to have the community, but you don't want them to be poisoned either. Yeah. So that's what it really comes down to. Is it fair to leave people like us with no options?
Children's health is the most vital concern among families who live in lead communities. Recreational activities that are common in other communities can pose a serious hazard in Herculaneum. One solution offered by the Doe Run Company to those who remain in the town is to replace the topsoil of contaminated yards. But the reality is, even if soil is replaced in a high lead content area, the lead will always find its way back.
We've had our yard replaced. A portion of it has been replaced twice now in 6 years. So the interior of the house, we completely took out all of the carpet and put in hard surface flooring, so that we could just mop it up and keep the lead out of it. So, and my house tests clean, so there's no lead in my house, but I still do have it in the yard. And that's basically from fallout from the smelter and also the trucks that were driving up and down my road for several years.
This is what they dumped in my yard. You know, that's from the lower end down there. Then after 2 years, they finally figured out that it wouldn't grow grass, and grass is a very important thing in lead control. Finally, they come back and say, well, we'll skin off the top of it, and they put 4 inches of decent topsoil on top of my yard. Well, when you got that much clay sitting below 4 inches of topsoil, this ground's not going to retain water at all. So I have to water it. I have to keep fertilizing it. As you can tell, it's pretty well all croaking again this year. I got to go through the whole scenario. Of course, according to them, it's no cost to us, you know, the resident.
We're sending out an application to be officially on the list that they can come out and do all the testing. And they're coming out within the next couple months. They're going to do inside testing with all the dust in the house, and they're going to do lead testing in the soil.
Although many families in the area have had their soil replaced, it's just a temporary fix.
Most of the yards have been cleaned up in town. There have been some that have had to be cleaned a second and a third time.
Another safety measure is the placement of air monitors all around the town.
The air station's probably a couple hundred yards away from us. It's a non-stop, 24 hours a day reading of the air quality around in our neighborhood and also in the entire town. They're everywhere. And I think there's at least 12 to 13 different sites that they're on that take the readings of the air quality.
There's been millions and millions and hundreds of millions of dollars spent on cleanup and, you know, just trying to make improvements at the plant. For the money that they've spent improving the plant and buying people out and all of the testing and everything they've done, they could have bought out the entire older part of town and given people a reasonable price for their property. You know, then we wouldn't be exposed.
Some do feel that the situation has improved in recent years. The improvements came when the Environmental Protection Agency, known as EPA, and the Department of Natural Resources, called DNR, entered the scene and realized just how hazardous the lead belt had become.
EPA did come in. What I understand, Doe Run used to police themselves, and that was kind of a big mistake, and somebody had to come in with some kind of oversight onto what was going on because yeah, they weren't quite doing their job, I don't think, as well as they should have. People getting sick and even people that work there, oh my God, you know, I'd hate to work in that place.
They are much more willing to work on, you know, creating new modules at the plant, you know, for things to work better. They're trying new things all the time. So, you know, that's definitely a positive in my eyes. And I think, yeah, the EPA and DNR, they all had a big hand in that.
The EPA developed the Community Action Group, or the CAG, to be a liaison between the Doe Run Company and the people. At first, many people attended the CAG meetings, but numbers have steadily declined. Greg Bieber was a CAG member for 2 years, but stopped because he felt ineffective.
I left, you know, I just said, hey, you know, this is going nowhere. I could go in there month after month and hear the same story over and over. You almost got the sense of EPA and Doe Run have their agenda set, what they're going to do.
There was a lot of animosity towards people, and these meetings were very contentious. They would start at 7 and last until 11 or midnight, and they got very heated. So, you know, they're obviously not like that anymore, but they're very small now. And I think a lot of that, though, is because of the people that were bought out, you know, have all moved away.
Despite attempts to clean up the lead, people who live amid the contamination wonder if the problem is just too big to solve. Eve Bieber feels that the EPA and Doe Run have got their priorities confused in trying to sort out the situation.
Let's do more for the community this way. Let's build some houses. Let's clean up the parks. Let's make places where there's a nice little place for people to walk a path. But I don't want to be involved in that because gone away from the big issue. What are you going to do about the lead?
It's just been 100 years of lead producing, lead smelting. And so it's accumulated over, many, many years. And it's not that easy to just get rid of it.
Herculaneum will never, in my lifetime and probably never in my children's lifetime, be a safe, normal, like all the rest of America. It'll probably never ever be that. To say anything different, I think you're kind of deceiving yourself. A person would be. As long as there's a lead smelter here, it's always going to be like that.
Many families have had to make the complicated decision to leave Herculaneum, the place they have called home, and the community they have become a part of.
This is our first house, and I always envision staying here till we're old, but of course that's not going to be the case if we decide to have kids and we don't want them in this area.
I guess the main thing is just make sure that you become knowledgeable about lead and know how to prevent it and keep it out of your house and do what you can. And it's a lot of work.
To the young people that's going to move here, do your studies first, because if you're going to have children here,
that's fair.
That's what I would like to say to them, because we can't take back what's been done to our children. We can't bring it back. They've already been affected. So do your studies before you move in this town and carry babies. Just make sure you check out everything.
Yeah, the web's got lots of information
because
on
as a parent, you want to look into that. A parent that loves their child is going to look into that, and Doe Run is not going to do it for you.
Apparently, neither is EPA.
And EPA isn't going to do it for you. So it's up to you, because once you're in, you're in.